evening, good afternoon to everyone here
Thank you,
today.
Masuki.
It is a pleasure to see everyone here again and to see your faces, to hear your voices, and especially to those who also joined a little bit earlier to listen to our talking about NSTT Egypt that passed this year. So before we start, let me just put some few ground rules, maybe you can call them frames, that this will be a 90-minute presentation. Please keep your videos on, but keep yourself in mute mode. We kindly give everyone the respect they need to give their presentation in today's session. If you have any questions, please write them down in the chat box, but with a Q in the front, so we can know if it's a question, a statement, or even just a comment. Also, we will be taking a picture at the end. So we'll be asking you to quickly, 30 seconds, do your makeup, maybe make yourself pretty, beautiful, so we can just have a beautiful photo that will be posted on Facebook. This recording will also be posted on YouTube. And when we announce the link, when it will be ready, so please check your emails or WhatsApp group. So we are all here together today for meta therapy. And in this ISNS wisdoms, we come here to stay connected, to feel refreshed, and to recharge ourselves. We come here knowing that we are going to be inspired, that we're going to learn something new, and probably in some new way we don't even know of, be upgraded. And with this meeting, we also connect with every NS community, and we become larger because we are here together as a family, as friends, and it's amazing. So with that being said, I'll be sharing the presentation of each community, and I'll be asking each one of you to say hi in your own native tongue as I move to your slide. So if I may ask that Michael just, okay, there we go. I'll be going to the slide. So if you can see, can everybody see? So for the first slide, we're moving on to the Institute of Neurosemantics, Egypt, Middle East, and North Africa. So if you could kindly please say hello.
Hello. Hi. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much. And next we have the Neuro-Semantics of Brazil.
Hi. Maybe I'm the only one, I don't know. Good. Hi.
Thank you, Ines.
Ines.
And then my own country, Neuro-Semantics of Africa.
Hello.
Hello.
Manuela, let's say everyone.
Hi.
I said hi.
And then we have the Institute of Philippines. You, did I hear the Philippines? Geraldine, did I hear hello? Did I hear anything? And then, of course, the USA.
Yay.
Thank you, Michael. And then we have Neuro-Semantics of Australia.
One.
Of course, it's midnight there, so we may not hear many from them.
Rare to hear Australians that quiet.
Yeah.
Then we have the Neuro-Semantics of Europe.
Hello, I'm here.
Sandra, nice to hear your voice. Hello, hello. And then Neuro-Semantics of Malaysia.
Hello.
Salamat evening.
Salamat. And of course, Neuro-Semantics of Scandinavia.
Hello.
Hello.
And then Neuro-Semantics of Hong Kong and China.
Hello.
Hello，大家好，
大家好。
Hello， 大家好 ，Hello。
Perfecto, ahora sí.
Fantastic. And the Institute of Neuro-Semantics of Indonesia.
Halo, selamat pagi, selamat malam, selamat petang semuanya.
I think you guys are winning. And then the Institute of Neurosemantics Latam.
Hello.
Hola, 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 gusto verlos. Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Hello.
Beautiful. And that will be all the semantics that I know of.
Si puede cerrar, por favor, el audio.
Please do mute your video for the continuing of this presentation. And I will be continuing as welcome today. We are here for meta therapy. And as NeuroSemantics has pioneered the exploration of meta for many years with the meta states model and the matrix model, it was NeuroSemantics that opened up the whole idea of the meta coaching system. And this is a system about how to take a person into the meta place in a structured and systemic way to facilitate the unleashing of a person's potential. And by opening up the meta place, NeuroSemantics has provided a detailed way to think about the inside game and how to live life inside out. Now, whatever game or set of interactions you want to play, you have access to the inner game. The inner game of fitness, business, love, persuasion, wealth, and so on. So all of this also applies to psychotherapy. And having worked out the structures for the generative chains of coaching, NeuroSemantics now offers a way to think about the structures of remedial change. This brings healing, renewal, integration, and etc. to those suffering from inner conflicts, injustice, and everyday crisis. Today, Michael Hall will present some of the findings from his latest book, Meta Therapy. And this is for therapists, it is for coaches, it is even for parents, it is for everyone and anyone who wants to understand how our humanity can be diminished and how to bring healing and wellness to hurting people. So with that, I say thank you to all of you here today, and I'll give this over to Mazuki, which will then give over to Michael.
Thank you, Christian, and welcome everyone. It is a pleasure for me to facilitate this presentation today. I am so looking forward to this presentation because meta therapy is a new topic for me, and I am super excited. Can't hold my enthusiasm right now. I had my mind blown in the last two sessions that Michael presented on APG and LPG. So I'm a glutton for more. So that's why I'm here this evening. And I hope that you are ready to join in with this presentation. So today's presentation is on meta therapy, and it is a joy and pleasure for me to invite the co-founder of ISNS and also the meta coaching system to present this topic. So everyone, unmute your mic so that we can give a great big hand to Dr. Michael Hall. Let's give him a big hand.
Yay!
Bienvenido, Michael.
Bravo, bravo.
Welcome, Michael.
So, Michael, when you are ready, we are ready to hear from you.
Okay. So, as I present today, Marzuki will be interrupting from time to time, asking questions really on your behalf, questions that he thinks may arise at any given point. And then toward the end, we'll just entertain lots of questions. Obviously, therapy is for healing. And those of you who do coaching, you're doing healing. You're healing people's frustrations and their confusions and helping them to forge forward into their future. Sometimes someone gets really seriously hurt and they're seriously suffering, and for that we use therapy. And so if we can go ahead with the presentation slides, I'm going to just walk through these slides, talk about each one. Some of them we'll skip over pretty quickly because they'll be pretty obvious and they fit into NeuroSemantics and APG.
Michael, would you like to reshare your slide?
Okay, does that do it? Do you see them there?
Not yet.
So I So holding on, we'll get to this thing in a second. I don't know what to click, Marzuki.
I have a copy of your book, Michael. If you want, I could just hold the pages up.
Yes.
Is that it? All right, there we go.
Yeah.
All right, so we obviously we want to start with what is therapy. That'll be our second slide there. So obviously we're talking about a problem and life's not going as we want it to go, but actually we're going a little bit deeper. It's a trauma. It's a hurt or a wound. And of course the wound or the hurt is not in the body or on the outside, it's on the inside. So we're going to ask the question in just a moment, what gets wounded on the inside that needs healing? And so as we look at what is therapy, very similar to coaching, it's a conversation. And that's what Sigmund Freud invented when Sigmund Freud started psychoanalysis. He called it the talk therapy. And so this talk is a very special talk, just like coaching. It's a change conversation. It is collaborative in that together we negotiate what the problem is. We negotiate what the solution is. And with therapy, not only will there be learning, but there'll be lots of unlearning, because usually that's the problem. We have learned something that's just not so, and we're cognitively wrong about something, and our map is not letting us go where we want to go. A lot of people in therapy, unlike people in coaching, have become so disempowered that they don't even know where to start or how to access their personal power. So we'll do a lot of that. If the wound, if the hurt was in childhood, what therapy ends up doing is reparenting. And this is very different from coaching now, because in coaching, we just don't do that. But in therapy, sometimes people need to be loved back to health, and they need to be parented, even if they're 30 or 50 years old. They need to know what a father is like or a mother is like, who's healthy, because they've been so abused or mistreated and didn't learn how to do good attachment. And so the attachment issues become common issues in therapy. And obviously, in all this process, there's a lot of self-discovery. This is true for coaching, but in therapy, because there's so many defenses and so many facades that people live behind and false selves that they have created, that self-discovery is discovering the real self, oftentimes for the first time. Let me do a few continuums to kind of position where therapy is. Here's a continuum of hurt. And right in the middle is where therapy would be when a person is tortured by reality. They're tortured by it because they don't accept it. And they're tortured by it because they want it to be different, because the external reality is not what they want, and they're fighting it. Over to the far right, frustrated with reality, that's where coaching would be positioned. You're troubled with reality. And so now I need to find better strategies and better maps for navigating my way through. Way over to the far left is the break with reality. We call that psychosis. And of course, that's where therapy occurs, that's institutional. And so a person goes and is instituted in a mental ward because the break with reality is so intense. See for our next one, degrees of hurt. Now we've got different kinds of interventions. And of course, this is just repeating what I just said. And the big difference here is for the first three checks there, it's remedial change. That is, we're it's a remedy for what's wrong. And that's a remedial change. We keep saying in coaching that coaching is generative change. It's generating new things and generating creative new possibilities. Whereas in counseling, therapy, and institutional therapy, we're trying to fix something that has really gone wrong. The next one, number 6 here, is a continuum between abnormal and normal. So right in the middle is normal. And this is a place for counseling or coaching. And this is where people may have been diminished. That was the word that Maslow used to, and he substituted it for neurosis. He didn't like the word neurosis, so he said this is human diminution, diminishing the human from what could be. Of course, to the far left is the abnormality again, when personality disorders are created. Far to the right is beyond normal. I didn't know what else to call it. Beyond normal. This is where we're expanding the possibilities and the actualization of a person to become the very best version of themselves that they can become. Starting with, and this is true for coaching as well as therapy, but it's really, really true for therapy. We start with the NLP and the neurosemantic distinction that there's a big difference between what happens to you and how you respond to it. What happens to you, that takes us outside into the outside world of circumstances and experiences and events. The inside world is your response, your consciousness, your sense of choice, how you think. And so how you respond and how you feel becomes ultimately your choice. And when we say that to people, we put them at cause. So we start with this inside-outside distinction. What happens to you on the outside, most of us don't have a lot of control over that. What happens with the weather, what happens with the politics, what happens with the economy, what happens when there's accidents and when we experience different health crises. How we respond, there's a lot of control over that. And that is the key to helping a person have hope that they can change their circumstances, change their internal experiences. And as we teach people how to live inside out. Now we have a quotation from Gregory Bateson, and he's writing about psychotherapy, and he says the dependency of psychotherapy upon the manipulation of frames follows from the fact that therapy is an attempt to change a patient's meta-communicative habits. That'll be key. That what therapy does, just like everything else we do in neurosemantics, we're changing a person's meta-communicative habits. The rest of the quotation is, before therapy, a patient thinks and operates in terms of a certain set of rules for making and understanding messages. So we think we have different rules that we've learned as we've grown up in our cultures and our families. In the process of therapy, there must have been a communication at a level meta to these rules. There must have been communication about a change in rules. So that's going to be the key. That meta-communicative habits implies these two levels. And so this is something, what we do in NLP and neurosemantics all the time, we separate meta and primary. So the big learning for someone, both in coaching and therapy, is that problems don't occur outside. To have a problem, it's inside. It's your definition of your expectation, what you mapped, what you understand. So outside are just events. How you interpret them will either be a problem or a solution or an opportunity or something else. So above and beyond that content that anyone is going to be talking about are all the inside processes. And so in this sense, therapy starts on the inside. So this will be a slide we'll go through real quickly, just the content level, which we all know about. and above that will be the structure. So that's why we call it meta therapy. You have to go to the structure, the frame, to find out how a person is thinking about it. In NLP, we talk about going meta. And in NeuroSemantics, this is the self-reflexive consciousness that we use to step out and look at, go above, and now in a meta position, we expand perspective, and this is where transformation occurs. Because meta is where the hidden framework for the content occurs. And these are the processes that are governing everything. And when you know that, as a coach, as a client, as a therapist, we take people inside so they can gain that perspective. And that's going to be key. Now, going inside and looking at your mind, looking at your consciousness, looking at all your memories, all your imaginations, all your thoughts, all your beliefs, it is like looking at the sky and all the clouds and trying to sort it out. Have you ever looked at the clouds and tried to classify clouds by their shapes? You know, kiss it goodbye. So what we've done in NeuroSemantics is begin to create some order and structure to the meta place. And in NLP, all that the field of NLP has done is to create a few of these levels, like belief, value, identity, purpose. And that's it. But we've created something else, and here's the latest version of the meta place. At the bottom, you see a person, and it's green because that's where reality is, and the person is interacting with reality, stimulus response, and that person has different deficiency needs that needs to be met. And everything above the dotted line there is our thinking, our believing, our perceiving, our remembering, our imagining. And so we create that movie in the mind, the representations, and then we draw our conclusions. And so starting with beliefs, we draw conclusions, and everything above that is a belief. A value is a belief in what's important. An identity is a belief in who you are. A memory is a belief in what happened. An imagination is a belief in what could happen. And so now we've got layers of these reflexive frames, and two of the meta levels, memory creates our background knowledge, and imagination creates our anticipating of the future. And so this is where we're going to take a person. This details it out in some of the words that we're using for the meta plays. But this is where we take a person. So the key is reflexivity, to think and feel about your previous thoughts and feelings, to reflect back on it. And each time you do, you just put a new layer of beliefs, understandings, learnings on top of it. And this can create the solution to things. It can create the problem. So when we reflect back on ourselves, we're talking about the self-reflexivity, the mechanism that sets up all these states. So by means of self-reflexivity, we layer thoughts upon thoughts, we create frames, we classify, we create categories, and all of this becomes our reference system. So be careful, the thoughts and the feelings you layer upon other layers, because it's your reference system. And now this is how you're going to be responding to yourself and to the world. The design of therapy, given that structure, is to get a person out of pain and distress, facilitate remedial change, reframe positive meanings, facilitate self-discovery and acceptance, empower for responsibility, and the ego's strength to face whatever that tortured reality is, create more productive maps. So that's what we're seeking to do when we do therapy. And this is just an illustration of when you bring one state to another state, you texture your experience. And so here we texture learning with joy, and we have joyful learning, a basic thing we do in meta states constantly. When we layer, then we create these richer states, and that's what we do in coaching. That's what we're going to do in therapy, because the textured state creates a modification of the experience as it textures it. Of course, this is framing, and that's another way that we talk about it, setting all these frames up and using the diamond of consciousness. Each of these are facets of the same thing. So as in coaching, so in therapy, the problem is never the person, it's always the frame. So far, that's the kind of basic neurosemantics, that's basic meta states. And of course, this powerful thing, self-reflexivity, can be really misused. And when it does, that's what creates all of the therapeutic problems, from unresourceful states, distressful, negative emotional states, states of confusion, misunderstanding, limiting beliefs, prohibitions. And so this is the structure of therapy. The problem is not outside, it's inside. It's these frames. It's this self-reflexivity misused. And so knowing that, now we can start identifying pathological states. And the pathological state is essentially a person who has brought a negative thought or feeling against themselves. So we say that when we talk about dragon slaying and dragon taming, and that's the structure, that it's negative meta structuring, and the principle, and if there's a way to really hone in and simplify what all therapy does, it's reversing this, bringing negative emotional energy against yourself. Because when we do this, when you start fearing your fear, you create paranoia, you've got an internal problem that can't be solved on the outside. Because you may think that everybody's out to get you, and you have all kinds of proof when you look outside, but the problem is your perspective. The way you're looking outside, you got that fear of fear. That's paranoia. You could even become afraid of your paranoia. You could be angry at your paranoia. You could be guilty about your paranoia. Anytime we do this kind of stuff, this is what's creating the therapeutic problem, the wound. So now symptoms of neuroses will show up as suffering, emotional distress, misconceptions, the cognitive distortions and the biases. As people feel these feelings of suffering and distress, they put up defenses, both the aggressive defenses and the escape defenses. And now it's hard to get in to deal with whatever is suffering. The defense creates a little bit of protection, but it doesn't work long term. It creates actually more problems. So now we got this internal conflicting of drives and frames, and the person doesn't know how to get out of that dilemma. Along the line, people make false selves. They live behind facades. They pretend to be something they're not. And that's because they're not okay with themselves. Therapy oftentimes addresses a fatalistic mindset that shows up as depression, anxiety, despair, hopelessness. As a lot of people who go through those kinds of distressful experiences, they make it worse by isolating themselves from others, not being open and sharing and vulnerable. And then, of course, confusion, the lack of critical thinking. So these are the symptoms. These are not the problems. Obviously, these are problematic, but these are symptoms of the real problem. So what's the real problem? Where does it all come from? Well, if you think that some bad thing that's happened to you is personal, it's about me, it's everywhere, pervasive, it's going to last forever, permanent, and it's present now, then you've got traumatizing framing. It's as simple as that. If you reverse that by thinking, no, this bad thing is that over there, losing the job, having a health crisis, going through a tornado, it's that, it's there, it's then we got some resilience framing. So at the heart of therapy is at the heart of what we do with the resilience training and neurosemantics, making this distinction. This slide identifies 4 different kinds of therapeutic hurts. The first one would be crises, just when life goes wrong. The next one is developmental deficiencies. This is when life goes wrong, when you're a child, a baby, or a young child, and you haven't learned how to take care of yourself to gratify the basic needs. They've gone wrong. And so now you may have neurotic needs, and how you're trying to satisfy them, it's not, it doesn't work. All of that also involves false mappings. And so now misunderstanding, and so understanding goes wrong. And when all of this becomes a system, a neurotic system, that defensiveness protects that neurotic system. And so now we got a real problem, and that's where the intense therapy comes in. So this distinguishes those 4 again. So crises, developmental deficiency, cognitive erroneous maps. Maslow said that the neurotic is cognitively wrong. He's not crazy. It makes perfect sense from the inside going out. And then the neurotic system, and now it becomes a system, and this is where therapy becomes really long-term, because we're changing a whole system. And the system, because every system aims for homeostasis and equilibrium, the system will resist therapeutic interventions and fight for itself, which is one of the strange things about being really wounded inside. And yet we this is why we say, coming from Maslow, that behind every behavior, even all this defensive behavior, is a positive intention. The person is striving for health. The person is striving to be okay. And so as a therapist would have to work on accepting those defenses in order to get into them and then to work with them. So everything that we've been talking about, what gets wounded is meaning. It's a structural problem. What gets wounded in anybody who needs therapy because they're suffering and there's some kind of hurt going on, what's hurt are their maps. So they have limited or erroneous beliefs, limited erroneous decisions, identities, understandings, intentions, memories, imaginations, expectations, and on and on. And so finding that wound, the wound is in the meanings. And it doesn't feel that way. It feels like the body's wounded because of the symptoms, because the person is hyperventilating and having anxiety expressions and depression, but those are symptoms. And so understanding that and going to the meanings, when you change the meanings, then all those symptoms changes. Dimensions of meaning, this is what we do in everything we do in neurosemantics. We ask 4 basic questions. What is it? How does it work? How's it important? What should I do? So just the meaning questions. I've put in here cognitive distortions, because that's where it goes wrong, and catching those, correcting those. I put the cognitive biases in there. And so the problems for therapy, to make a summary here, the problem of meaning making and dealing with those false maps. That's hard to do when there's not ego strength to face them. So in therapy, one of the reasons it takes a lot longer than in coaching is because we've got to strengthen the person to separate person and experience, person and thinking, person and emotion, person and behavior. And as we separate that, and the person develops enough ego strength to face the fact that some of my maps are just wrong. So problems of therapy, a therapist has to constantly be on the alert that the person, the sense of threat and danger, which come from the inside, not the outside, that stress may make it impossible for them to start thinking clearly. Stress and strong negative emotions undermine the ability to think clearly. And then, of course, dealing with neurotic needs, especially if they become addictions or the whole neurotic system. So here's part of the cure. The meaning you make is the life that you live. So how you construct your meanings about anything, about the health crisis, about the accident, about losing a job, about losing a loved one. The meanings you construct determines the life you live and the quality of your life. And so we go back to our power as a meaning maker, so that we can get free from mediocre meanings, devastating and destructive meanings, and create life and life-enhancing meanings. Once again, ego strength, that's going to be one of the key things we do in therapy, strengthening the person to face it. That distinguishes it from coaching. Once again, the inner threat, safety is the key to therapy, making it safe. And that means acceptance, no judgment, seeking only to understand, supporting, listening, validating. So all of the things we do in coaching, it becomes just all that much more important in therapy. And then dealing with the neurotic needs, we can come back to that if we need to deal with that, or the system to understand that. And so let me stop at this point, because the next little section is going to be on what we can do now that we know what the problem is. You're muted, Marzuki.
Right. Thank you, Michael, for that first part. We've got quite a number of questions in the chat box. I've got my own questions. However, I'll give priority to the questions in the chat box. The first one from Elvish. For those suffering depression and undergoing medication, how does meta-therapy or healing helping them? By learning NeuroSemantics and NLP, is it helping them to overcome depression? So that's the first question.
So the key with medication is, if a person needs medication, while they're on that medication, they need to learn their cognitive distortions and how to overcome them. If you medicate and only medicate, it's not going to solve anything. It's just going to ameliorate the distress, the symptom. So anybody on medication, a doctor has prescribed medication that calms them. They're calm enough now to learn to think differently. If they don't, nothing's going to improve.
Thank you. And next question is, how to judge whether a visitor, I'm guessing that referring to a client, can be coached if the client is psychotic or neurotic? Can he use the coach?
Well, if they're psychotic, they won't even show up at your coaching room if they're psychotic. But if they're neurotic, and we're all neurotic to a certain degree, because it just means full of nerves. It means that my mental mapping is confusing me. I'm disoriented and I don't have it figured out. Well, that's describing human nature. So all of us are neurotic to a certain degree. Now, the question about coaching is, do they have the ego strength to face it? And are they okay enough that they are not in desperation about their self and therefore liable to suicide? So if they're okay, basically, have questions about their value, have low self-esteem, that's okay. If they're okay enough to face the reality and to be challenged, then they can be coached. If they don't have the ego strength, then you'll make it worse by trying to coach them. So don't try to coach them. Refer them to a good therapist who knows how to handle that. Because first of all, they have to strengthen their ego strength so they can face it.
Yes, referring to the answer that you made just now, I remember, I think in your the meta coaching system book, where you talk about the different helping professions. You're talking about consulting, coaching, and all that. And when does a coach step into mentoring, step into training, or step into consulting? And you made a mention, when does a coach step into therapy? And you wrote there, never. So can you just explain a little bit more from the perspective that you've written there?
So the reason I say never is because in many countries, if you did, you would be committing probably a felony. So we really want to be careful about that, because if you don't have the background training for recognizing abnormalities and personality disorders and recognizing that, then you can be sued for malpractice. So don't ever do that unless you've got the training. And NLP does not train people to be therapists. It gives you some tools, but you're still not a therapist and you're not qualified to work as a therapist. And that's where we've got probably 100 good therapists in the field of neurosemantics, people who have that background. They've got a master's degree in counseling or something along that line, mental health work, and they can operate there. So we got lots of people we can refer to, and we need to do that and be very careful about stepping outside of our place. If you step into doing therapeutic work and the person's not ready for it and you don't know how to deal with the aberrations, you can make things a lot worse. And we need to be very careful about that.
So following that, so how does a coach determine whether the client requires a coach, or now the client requires a counselor or therapist? When does what is the criteria that the coach needs to use?
So let me refer back to the ACMC manual, the 10 questions on coachability. And it's about ego strength, it's about living in the past, self being okay, ready to accept a relationship, an intimate relationship with a coach. Those 10 questions in the ACMC manual will give you that distinction.
Thank you for that, Michael. So I'll be going back to the ACMC manual then. Another question here from BJ. If neurosis creates a defense system of internal conflict, does this presuppose the client is aware of the limits?
Usually not. And this is one of the difficulties in doing therapy, and why therapy, one of the aims is self-awareness, because there's not that awareness, even of defensiveness. The person feels threatened, and the threat seems and feels like it's coming from outside, not inside. And so most of the time people are not aware, and helping them to become aware, it takes ego strength to become aware that here's some things I got to live with, I don't like. Maybe I was mistreated as a child. Maybe I was raped or robbed. And I hate that, and I feel guilty. And why would I feel guilty? Because I didn't do it. But people feel guilty. It's false guilt. And so to get away from all of that, people have amnesia to it. People forget it. People distort it. And so whatever was the activity from which they drew the false conclusions. I'm unclean, I'm not worth it, I don't deserve it, I'm a nothing, I'll never amount to anything. All of the false conclusions that they draw, that's what's doing the damage, not the original event.
Thank you. And BJ put in there, that requires great rapport skills from the coach. So thanks for the answer. Question
exactly.
from Leonardo Mendoza. Can drug and alcohol problems be treated with meta therapy? In an excellent course by David Murphy, he showed us how to use meta coaching to help the company.
Sure. So once again, those are just external events and how you interpret it. And why are you drinking? Is it just a social drink, or are you drinking to escape something? Are you drinking to prove something? And so why are you drinking? What addiction are you covering with the alcohol or drugs?
السوشيال ده بيبقى فن كده يعني مش مد.
Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Okay, metatherapy is helping a person be the person from the inside that can handle whatever, whether it is alcohol or drugs or any other event. Alcohol and drugs are mostly symptoms. Yeah, and yes, they create more problems. They can create all kinds of health problems. But getting back to what is the meaning that you're giving to this that makes it now compulsive and addictive. And so looking at the addictive personality, which no one is born with that. That is created.
Okay, thank you, Michael, for that. Now, I'd like to invite you to continue with what can you do as a coach when we are faced with this. So go ahead, Michael. I can't wait.
So this is what a therapist does, and of course, in coaching, we do much of the same thing. Carl Rogers said that there's 3 therapeutic healing activities from a therapist: acceptance, unconditional positive regard, and authenticity. So we start there, and what this does is it creates the safe therapeutic atmosphere in which we can do the therapy. So as in coaching, we seek to understand the person on his or her terms. And if you want to know what's going on inside the mind, you start listening representationally and tracking the words to the movie that's playing in their mind. If you took the words and words only and you track them, what would you see and hear? And then as a therapist, you would look for what's missing. What could I be missing that the person has not said? So we start there. We will ask penetrating questions using the meta model, and this facilitates critical thinking as we ground things. Then we we go to create a richer mental map of the world, so that a person learns how to think effectively and adequately about whatever is going on. In the whole process, we're going to be catching the distortions, the biases, the fallacies, because if that's what's gone wrong, that's what's creating all the hurt and the wound. So the cognitive distortions are especially at the source of this, at the core of this. I'll never amount to anything. If a person believes that, I will never amount to anything. We've got exaggeration, we've got personalizing, we've got over focusing on one thing. And so the problem is the mental mapping that we've created. The stepping back is going to be the key. And this is where a lot of therapists just simply do not know how to do this, to step back either in the mind or physically, kinesthetically, and help a person gain perspective. And when we can step back and gain perspective, then it enables us to move to choice point and to transforming whatever it is that's been doing the damage. So we rise up, we set these higher frames, and all of this can rejuvenate the meta plays, so that now we've got some empowering beliefs and values and decisions, etc., so that we can manage our way through the world. So this is at the heart of therapy. The difference is now we're looking for wounds, self-conflict, conflict of the frames, things that are distorting the personality. So, ready for more questions?
Yeah, the question that comes to mind, because in one of the earliest slides that you talked about with respect to people needing therapy is about the, you mentioned it's more about the reality, break with reality, tortured with reality, frustrated with reality. So it struck me that the issue is them not being friendly to reality. They have this confusion between their map and reality. Can you just explain a little bit more, Michael?
Yeah, so how do any of us deal with reality? It's with our maps. What do you think that is? How do you think that works? What is the meaning of that, significance of that, and what should you do? The 4 meaning questions. And as you make maps about that, if you think it is about you, if you think it's everywhere and forever, then you have just locked yourself into a box of pain and suffering, and that generally is the structure of clinical depression. It's me, it's everywhere, it's forever. And so it's the mapping. The mapping is what is distorted and wrong and needs correcting. And so that's what we do with almost everything we do in neurosemantics, helping people create good maps that will facilitate them dealing with whatever they have to deal with.
Okay, so what do you do with people who insist that their map is right and not the reality?
So with lots and lots of rapport, lots of compassion, because these people can easily be offended and easily stressed when you fight with them. So we take away all the fight. There is no resistance. So we enter into it. And this is what was so great about Milton Erickson. He would work with a schizophrenic, and the schizophrenic would say the craziest things, and there was no debate. he would enter into it, and whatever it was, just asking questions about it. Questions plant doubt.
Questions.
So when you plant a question, and now it's like, is that really so? And doubt is what makes the whole foundation shaky. It shakes it up and starts to question it from the inside out. So it's not our doubts to them, it's getting them to doubt from inside. That's the key. But you can only do that if they let you inside. And so that's where it takes just tremendous rapport to stay with a person and follow the logic of their thinking with it throughout it, because there will be contradictions, there will be incongruencies, and as you find those and develop them, then there's the step out. Does this work for you? Do you like this? You want to keep this? The step out also enables us to go to that ecology check and to check how good this map is in terms of quality of life.
Okay, thank you. We've got several questions in the chat box. I'll read the first one from Elvish. Self-reflexivity for those undergo downward spiral and stuck in the thinking progress over and over. How to get out of it?
So several skills that we have in NeuroSemantics. First of all, call it out. Oh, you're thinking negative. Oh, that's a limiting belief. Oh, that's a decision you made. Sounds pretty limiting. Call it out. We call out the meta levels, belief, thinking, remembering, expectation, whatever it is. Call it out. They don't have that self-awareness. But when you call it out, oh, so you're bringing some negative thoughts to yourself. And just as I said a moment ago, as you enter into it and you're just describing what they're doing and checking with them, yeah, bring negative thoughts. That works. That makes life a party. Okay. You want to keep doing that? So you've got to call it out as it's happening in real time. If you wait and then try to rewind that conversation back to where it happened, it's just the timing's off.
Another comment here. The name is in Chinese, so I can't read that. The coach's map is not necessarily right. So what I would add to that is that, so how do I, as a coach, refrain myself from imposing my map, from deciding that the client's map is not working?
Well, you do decide that it's not working. That's your diagnosis. Okay. That's your ability to evaluate your client, that the client needs some help. Because if you can't make that evaluation, but you may not say that to the person if you're coaching or in therapy, instead you ask questions. You ask questions about the map. Does it work? Okay, where does it work? Where does it not work? So what do you believe about your boss being obnoxious to you and cursing at you? What do you believe about that? Well, he shouldn't do that. Okay, well, probably he shouldn't. And let's say he does. What do you believe about that? Well, he's an idiot. Okay, so what do you believe about? And so you enter into it. Don't fight with him. Don't argue with him. Okay, he's an idiot. Let's say he's an idiot. Let's say he's an absolute son of a bitch. What do you believe about that? Well, he's making my life miserable. Also, that's what you believe. Now let's step aside. Does this belief serve you? Does this belief enhance your life? Does this belief make life a party? Would you want your children to believe this? If you didn't believe that, what would be a belief that you could have? And so, and now we're doing the reframing from inside. And that's really the key, and I can't emphasize it too much. we as coaches or therapists have to enter into the meta place of the client. If you stay in your meta place, it's a frame war.
Okay.
So you enter into theirs to see it from the inside out and to question it from the inside. And so this takes a lot of ego strength on your behalf as a therapist or client, as a coach, you're secure in yourself, so you can give up yourself and enter into theirs.
Wow, that's heavy. That's heavy. So, okay, let me go to Mandy's question here. In terms of meaning making, if clients are seriously cognitively distorted, defensive, and reject or deny to face his or her distortion, do they need to have pure therapy or just treat them through coaching in meta therapy?
Well, the key will be, do they have the ego strength? Are they willing to face the unpleasantness and the anxiety? So one thing about therapy, when I used to run a therapy practice, and I would always warn people at the very beginning, this is going to be unpleasant. It's going to create anxiety. It's going to create internal distress because there's something not right on the inside. Are you willing to go there? So far, you've had defenses and you protect yourself, but those defenses now are having these problems. You're not getting along with people very well. You're drinking. You're aggressive. You put people down. You're sarcastic. Have all the. You can keep doing that, or we can go in. It's not going to be pleasant. I'm here to support you throughout this whole process, but there's going to be anxiety coming up, things you don't want to look at. Are you willing to do that? And if a person isn't willing to do that, refer them, because coaching will make it worse.
Yeah. Okay. Question here from David Murphy. Just to understand the difference between meta coaching and meta therapy, is that in meta therapy we use the same structure of neurosemantics, but applied specifically to help the client to develop ego strength. Is this right?
That's right. And to add some more, we're going in to do remedial change. We're not going in to do generative change yet. So the other thing that's going to make a big difference is I'm not here trying to help this person self-actualize. I'm here helping them create a remedy for something that is not right, that may be broken, that may be wounded, that's hurt. So I'm going after looking for suffering as a therapist. Whereas a coach, you don't go looking for suffering. If the suffering appears, then you deal with it. But you're looking for generative change and making things at the very, very best they can be. So the focus of therapy is very different. It's looking for the wound, looking for the hurt, and trying to create remedy for that.
Okay, so somehow when I read BJ's question, I notice there's some similarity to what you have just answered, but I'll just read this to you. Please say more about the distinction between meta coaching and meta therapy.
So meta coaching is really about challenging people compassionately to push them and to stretch them out of their comfort zone and to get them to step up and be everything they can be. And so setting goals and striving and holding accountability, that's meta coaching. Meta therapy is, let's find that suffering. Let's find out what went wrong, and let's correct it so that you can have peace and harmony and tranquility, and you can rest. The war inside can be ended. Let's end that war. And so the focus is just so different because the problem is so different. For the coach, the problem is what's in my way of me being my best version of me? For the therapist, the problem is, how are you wounded inside and not fully human? And let's find that.
Thank you. A comment here from Pumeza: the map can collapse with all rapport and understanding. It actually fizzle out. So this is referring to being listening intensely and in rapport. A question from Elvish: for a person who is dealing with uncertainty, feeling helplessness, powerless, that's causing not able to sleep well, eat well, does the person need to go for either coaching or therapy? Or is it we still need to check the person's ego strength to determine the remedy?
Well, first of all, always check ego strength, just always. The lack of power may be that they just don't know how to access their basic powers of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, access and own them. Or if it was a developmental deficiency, they got stuck at a very low level in their development as a child is growing up, and they were constantly crushed and told, don't think, don't feel, don't you speak, don't you contradict me, don't you act. And so a person's powers could have been framed, and they drew the conclusion, I'm a victim, I'm nothing, I can do nothing. And you can teach them the power zone till you're blue in the face, and it's not going to make any difference. They've got a wound at the construct level that needs to be changed. And they need to be reparented. That would be a case for reparenting, from what I just described, if they were crushed as a child. And so you still have to ask about ego strength, and you have to do a little bit more understanding of their sense of power.
There is this question from Raphael. I don't quite understand it. However, I'll just read it out to you. I hear the word therapy and think of someone with studies in psychology. In the context of coaching, would it be correct to use the term meta therapy? Or when?
No. In coaching, I would just never use the word, because you're doing coaching, not therapy. Knowing about therapy, knowing that there are these 10 distinctions we make in coachability in the ACNC manual, knowing that helps you to know when to refer. And having people in your community, in the MetaCoach community, who you know are good therapists that you can refer to, is such an important piece. And as a community, we need to identify all the ones who can do that and are doing that, so that we can refer people when that's necessary. And life crises can take a perfectly normal, healthy person, and a life crisis can crush a person. Sometimes we see a hurricane or a typhoon come through a country, and some people they well up inside themselves, and they have determination and perseverance, and they get out there the next day and they're trying to clean things up. Other people are crushed. They were normal before, everything was fine, they had the ego strength before, they're crushed. And they sit down and they cry and they weep for weeks. Well, they need therapy, because something is really crushed and wounded inside them, and that's what needs to be fixed. That's the remedial change that needs to occur, and it can occur anytime. We have had at MetaCoaching 3 instances where someone came. the stress of that program was so intense for them, they collapsed. They collapsed into a catatonic coma. That happened once here in the States, or they collapsed into hallucinated distortions. We had that happen just recently. A person collapsed. We had to send them to the mental hospital. So this is where making that distinction between coaching and therapy is so important to make, because the methodology of how we intervene is going to be very different. We may use the same tools, but it's a very different intervention.
Thank you, Michael. A question from Susan: whether personality disorder like borderline or bipolar can be helped with metatherapy?
No, definitely. Read my book, Structure Personality. I went through the 14 personality disorders and showed how NLP and Neuro-Semantics deals with each one of those. Borderline personality, manic depressive, of course. The book, Structure Personality, Ordering and Reordering Personality Using NLP and Neuro-Semantics, is a big, thick book. It's been translated into Arabic recently. It's been used by universities to teach personality theory. And so, yes, of course, metatherapy works on that.
Next question from Leonardo Mendoza: through metatherapy, is it then possible to help and accompany someone not to return to drugs or alcoholism by changing their belief system, their meta programs? Is there no need for AA or other support groups that don't change the system anymore?
So first of all, the 12-step programs are good programs. There's some problems with them. Step number one in every 12-step program, I am an alcoholic, I am a sexual abuser. They do identification. But apart from that, the 12-step programs have shown over the years, longitudinal studies, the best support group for drug and alcohol people. So anybody who's coming and getting some coaching or therapy with anyone in Neuro-Semantics, I would recommend also, as supplementary, get to a 12-step program. Don't deny yourself that value. It's a good social, cultural value support group, and they have good history of success. The person in the field of NLP who's done the most in drug and alcohol is Richard Gray. So Dr. Gray, New York City, he did his doctorate on drug and alcohol using NLP technology. So if that's your field, drug and alcohol, I would recommend Richard Gray.
We have 20 new messages. I'll just go through as quickly as I can within the time frame that we have. From Tiffany, it is said that delusional disorder is caused by false belief in one's mind again and again. Can we do something to retrieve the false belief while the client isn't aware of her delusional disorder?
Well, if the question is, can we do the change without their participation, the answer is no. Both in coaching and in therapy, the client has to be an active participant. And this is where some therapies really go wrong. It's as if the therapist is saying, come in, and like a dentist, just open your mind, I'll work on it, and you'll be fine. But it doesn't work that way. It's a collaborative, co-created situation. And therapy is a co-created situation where you slowly help to bring to awareness their delusions so that from inside, they change their delusions. And you can hypnotize them all you want, But if they're not an active participant from the inside, it's not going to work.
A comment here from David. Once I had a client who was looping in negative thoughts, and when I called out what she was doing, her answer was, yes, I know, I am an idiot. So even with revealing what the client is doing, we can find some that whatever you present, they will use it against themselves. When I let her know what she did with her last answer, that was the key piece. She noticed how she was treating herself, and that was the beginning of her healing.
Yeah.
So,
so that's using self-reflexivity to become aware of what we're doing with our self-reflexivity. That's the step out. And the step out is what gives the person a leverage point for change.
Short question from Richard Olson. How do you reparent?
So in therapy, this was one of the things Sigmund Freud discovered about transference. Transference is when a client transfers to you as the authority figure in the room. If you're a male, as the father; if you're female, as a mother. The transference is what the client unconsciously does in treating you like the authorities in their life, their previous life. And so using transference, this is where we would be a father to them, the father they never had, the mother they never had, and essentially loving them back to health. And this is where that would be long-term intensive therapy, where we use the transference in a positive way and slowly bring it to their awareness of what they're doing and how they're doing it, so that we can eventually break that transference.
Okay, Michael, time is of the essence, so I would like to stop the questions here, because there are, I noticed 24 new messages down there, so we will not be able to get that. So what I would like to do is, Michael, what are your final words that you want to say to us regarding this topic for this evening?
Okay.
Go ahead.
So next month at our Zoom community Zoom, this subject will be continued. So come back with us next month and we'll continue this subject. Therapy is about healing. And if you're a therapist, and I'm speaking now just to those who have therapeutic background, if you're a therapist, your words can be healing words that bring renewal and life to people who are on the inside really suffering. They're wounded, they're suffering. And we've got the tools in Neuro-Semantics and NLP to bring healing and renewal to their life and set them free from all that internal pain that they walk around with every day. And so if, as a coach, you meet someone who needs that therapy, refer them to a good neurosemantic therapist. And in that way, we can bring a lot of healing and renewal and liveliness back to the world and to the people who are suffering that. If you suffer, if you happen to have some suffering and what you're doing with coaching is not working, find a therapist. A therapist it doesn't mean you're crazy. It just means that there's some hurt inside that needs to be remedied. That's all. And to remedy that, put you back in life.
Thank you very much, Michael. That part that you said, set them free, that really touches me. Brought some moisture to my eyes when you said that, because that is what we are here to do, to set people free from whatever that is holding them back. So thank you very much for this wonderful presentation this morning, this afternoon, this evening. We can be at any time. Really appreciate your generosity in sharing the information, knowledge, and I hope for me, what I gain from this discussion, I will be bringing it into my coaching, and I hope that you will also be bringing something useful from this presentation into your lives so that you can set those people free. So with that, again, thank you, Michael, and I would like to pass over this session back to Christian. So go ahead, Christian.
Thank you very much, Mazuki. And I just want to say again, thank you, Michael, for this amazing deep discussion on metatherapy. I am quite curious and wonder what everyone's new awarenesses they've gotten through this session, and especially within themselves, and for what they will have with their clients. Before we go forward, we would please like to take a picture of everyone here. So please video yourself so we can see your face. And let's take a picture. Mazuki, you will move forward with the picture.
Hold on, Michael, can you stop share so that I can get the gallery?
You share. Stop share.
Good.
Okay.
So now I've got the whole gallery. So you have 30 seconds to get your makeup ready. Geraldine, are you sure you're ready? Okay.
Very much.
30 seconds. 30 seconds over. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Oops. I pressed the wrong button. Now, where do I go? Okay. Sorry. 3, 2, 1. No. Wrong one again. Okay. 3, 2, smile. Yes. And next page. 3, 2, smile. Okay. Next page. 3, 2, smile. And 2 more pages. Ready? 3, 2, smile. And the last page, 3, 2, smile. There, we've got everyone in there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mazuki.
Over to you, Christian.
Thank you. So just before everyone leaves, we have 2 announcements from Mazuki and David. So Mazuki, as I give the floor back to you.
The announcement that I would like to make is in June of 2023. So mark your calendar from the 16th of June to 24th of June 2023. Malaysia will be hosting ACMC. So this invitation goes out to coaches who would like to review the ACMC, and also to trainers who would like to bring the skill to another level by bringing in the skill of meta coaching into your training. So that's the announcement from me. ACMC in Malaysia in 2023. Thank you.
So I guess it's my turn. Thank you very much. And I just want to announce that we will bring Michael Holt for delivering meta therapy in Mexico City. That will be from July 7 to 9. 7 to 9 July in Mexico City. So if you want more information, just send me an email and I will give you whatever is needed. And the second announcement is that we are just about 6 months before NSTT in Mexico, in Cancun. So if you want to become a trainer, NeuroSemantics trainer, or you know somebody that would like to do that, or if you want to revisit some of the pieces, for example, the APG psychology, the psychology of APG, you can join us just for those days. And if you want more information, once again, send me an email and I will be pleased to reply. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Mazuki. I can also agree that ACMC and NSTT has been one of the biggest life-changing events I've ever been to, especially each time I've came back, someone told me, especially close friends or family, you've changed. Something's different about you. And it's always been for the better. So I really recommend them. That being said, thank you, everyone, for coming today for the presentation. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mazuki. Hope you have an awesome morning, evening, afternoon, be it at lunch, breakfast, or maybe to sleep. Thank you all and have an awesome weekend.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Michael. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye. Thank
Michael. See
you.
you no
See you.
December.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, we'll see some of you in Mauritius pretty soon.
Thank you. Time for your coffee, Michael and Geraldine.
Gracias. Gracias, Michael.
Yes.
Good to see everyone.
Waiting for you, Michael, Mark, Bali.
Oh yeah, yeah, we missed you. Miss you,
Yeah.
Basha. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Michael and Geraldine, Masuki.
Thank you,
and Christine.
Mandy.
Hi, Mandy. Miss you.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you so much, Michael, Geraldine, Marzuki, all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Hamza.
Michael. Thank you, Michael. Bye.